Chapter 14, Broken Soul. Naruto after 2 days. The sound of wind moving the branches of the trees relaxed him, his eyes closed as he took a deep breath. The birds were singing his favorite song, one standing on his shoulder, and his sound was on his ear. Naruto felt at peace amongst nature, and the grass was caressing his legs crossed in the ground. He could hear the water moving in the lake, and he listened to a fish jumping from the water, like wanting to show himself. A smile spread on his cheek as one more bird landed on his red hair, and used his legs searching through his hair, almost thinking that his hair would be a beautiful little house to lay her eggs. Suddenly the bird flew away, as Naruto's body filled with Kurama's chakra. His nails started growing slowly, his whiskers grew, his hair looked to react from his chakra, they got spiker, his teeth slowly grew, and he looked sharper. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, but instead of blue ones, they were red like blood. Naruto felt his body grow stronger, even more than when he unlocked his chakra for the first time. He slowly stood up on his legs, and he noticed the wind was harsher now. "You're doing well, Naruto. Give it 5 years, and I'm sure you can start using 1 tail worth of chakra," Kurama complimented as his chakra slowly washed away, and Naruto turned back to normal. He wished Naruto to start using a bit of his chakra if anyone stupid enough decided to harm him. But at the same time, not too much chakra since Naruto was still young. Naruto nodded his head and suddenly fell on his knees, panting. He felt exhausted after accessing that much chakra. He wished Kakashi-sensei was here, but he had gone to another mission, much to Naruto's surprise since it hadn't been a long time since he returned. Still panting, he decided to lay on the grass. He used his right arm as a pillow, and the grass touched his chin slightly. He felt relaxed again, and slowly caught his breath. "Kurama, you didn't tell me this would happen," Naruto accused, but his voice was half joking. Kurama smirked inside him. "Well, you know what they say, no pain, no gain," Kurama replied, but feeling relaxed, he slowly closed his thinking but thought was not leaving his mind. What is this feeling? Why can Naruto have this kind of effect on the nature around him? Kurama thought, slightly angry since he thought of himself as intelligent, and not having answers wasn't something he liked, but at the same time interested. He then noticed that Naruto had fallen asleep. Kurama opened his eyes slightly to see the trees around him slowly growing, full of life. He liked it more like this, Gigi. You said we should help humans, and I think this one is worth it. I wonder if he is the one you talked to us about? Kurama asked himself and then thought about his brothers and sisters. He knew all of them were sealed like him, and thought if their Jinchuriki is like his, or is just some bastard who only wants their power. Naruto was sleeping quietly in the grass, 3 birds were resting on his back. They didn't look scared of him, the sun was shining, making everything brighter. A shadow slowly moved towards Naruto. "You found a good place to sleep, my boy," the voice of the old Hokage was heard. He noticed that Naruto didn't react to him, and was still sleeping. He wondered why he would be so tired to sleep out here. His eyes looked at the grass around him that looked to have grown, and he put a hand on his chin, wondering why. He decided to ignore it and think later about it. Hiruzen slowly kneeled and picked up Naruto gently, trying not to wake him up. He shunsin away to his apartment. Opening the door, Hiruzen could see everything was in its place. Nothing was in the middle of the carpet, or just stuff left around. It was clean. He smiled and saw 2 opened scrolls lying on the table near the couch. He saw a wooden kunai near the scrolls. Hiruzen reached the bedroom and put him in the bed. Naruto was still sleeping, his right eye covered from his red hair. Sarutobi chuckled at seeing that his hair had already reached his eyes. He wondered if Naruto would want to cut his hair, but decided to ignore it. He covered him with a sheet and left the apartment. 2 months later. The clock was ticking, and Naruto slowly opened his eyes to see that it was morning. He was feeling the sun shining through the window. He rubbed his eyes with his forearm and stood up from the bed. It had gotten colder for a week now. It was December, and the streets, houses, and everything was covered in snow. It was still only half a foot deep, but Naruto liked it nonetheless. He has trained like crazy in Fuinjutsu, chakra control, and ninjutsu in the last 2 months. 3 weeks ago, he started training in level 2. To pass level 2, he needed to make an explosive tag for a kunai, seal 2 weapons or more, and seal 3 completely different items. Naruto loved Fuinjutsu, and he would spend a lot of time reading and rereading his books about Fuinjutsu. His Jiji had given him a few points here and there. He still hasn't started training on taijutsu. Kakashi told him he could begin when he reached 5 years old. Naruto was looking forward to that, even though he knew it would be hard. When it came to ninjutsu, he could only do one so far, changing his position with a log. Naruto wondered where the log even came from. Kakashi told him he would teach him clone jutsu soon. Naruto smiled, looking at the snow, but he was most happy that Tojiji would come soon. It had been 5 months, and he couldn't wait. Not mentioning that apparently, his Tojiji was a Fuinjutsu master according to his Jiji. Naruto was surprised and couldn't wait to ask him questions about the art of Fuinjutsu. As he opened the door that led to the restroom, he suddenly felt a presence above the roof near a building close to his apartment. This usually wasn't a problem, but he couldn't feel any emotions coming from this one. Naruto felt a cold sweat running down his cheek, his heart beating on his throat. He hoped the same thing wouldn't happen again like last time, when he felt the emotionless Anbu. Naruto was about to say something to Kurama, when the presence disappeared. He breathed a sigh of relief and decided to train his chakra control. Keep a kunai on the tip of his finger and a leaf on his forehead. After eating breakfast, he grabbed a wooden kunai and leaf that he kept for training purposes. He put 2 kunai in the tip of his fingers and a leaf on his forehead. As he relaxed, trying to keep the balance, he remembered his shogi matched a month ago. Shikaku-sama had invited him to dinner. Naruto walked alongside Shikamaru and his parents. His freshly cleaned hair blew in the wind as it dried. He had been scared when Shikamaru's mother had become so downright murderous, but she had simply had him wash and reclothed him before setting out for this Chizu's place. Honestly, Shikamaru's mother had been incredibly understanding and constantly smiled at him as they walked. It was excellent, and he found himself smiling back at her as he walked comfortably with his friend's family. Shikamaru walked lazily next to Naruto. Despite not knowing Naruto too well until recently, he still felt happy his friend was dropping that guard he seemed to have constantly. His sharp mind caught every flinch Naruto might have when he would be around Shikamaru's family. He had noticed how Naruto seemed uncomfortable with someone being so intimate as to wash him as Shikamaru's mother did, but he allowed it to happen. Now Naruto was starting to relax in her presence, as well as his father's. When they were close to Chizu's place, Naruto finally broke the comfortable silence that had been surrounding their walk. Where are we going? He almost shouted. His exuberance shone through to his bright blue eyes. Shikamaru's mother turned and smiled gently to him. To a friend's place, their food is the best, she said quietly. Naruto's eyes widened. No way. Ichiraku's ramen is the best, he said as he pointed at Shikamaru's mother accusingly. Shikamaru and his father chuckled as Yoshino's eyebrow twitched. Suddenly a shout could be heard from the compound they were now standing in front of. Oi! A heavy-set woman came bursting out the doors. The entire Nara family stepped back as the woman rounded on Naruto. Who dares say my cooking is not the best in this village? She shouted to Naruto. Naruto glared back up at the woman. No food is better than Ichiraku's. Ramen is the food of the gods, he shouted to the now red-faced woman. The woman's eyes narrowed. We'll see if you can keep that tune after you eat my cooking, the woman said as she brought herself up to her full height, and Naruto saw that she was wearing a purple blouse with golden trimmings, a pair of black pants, and heeled shoes. Her eyes had some coloring to the at the corners as she looked up at the Nara family, and broke into a smile before reaching down and grabbing Naruto by the scruff of his clothes. Let the lesson begin, she shouted as she turned around and headed back into the compound. Close the door behind you, Shikamaru-kun, she yelled as Naruto got glimpses of a few doors before he was set into a seat. Naruto's mouth watered as he looked at the veritable feast in front of him. Shikamaru chuckled as he walked up behind Naruto. This is the Akimichi clan. They have some of the best restaurants in the city, Naruto, he said as he sat down next to him. Naruto was still focusing on the food as the same woman from before, and two males entered the room. Shikamaru munch, so you're the munch guest tonight, Choji said as he looked at his friend. He sat down next to him and finally noticed Naruto staring hungrily at the table. Naruto, he asked between munches. Naruto turned to look at him with drool coming out of his mouth. Choji, he asked as his eyes returned from their glazed look. His stomach gave a large growl as he hadn't eaten in a few days. Choji blinked at his stomach's growl, and the older-looking Choji laughed heartily from the head of the table, bringing the young adults' attention to how Shikamaru's parents and Choji's parents had finally joined them. I don't believe we have had introductions, have we, Naruto-san? She said quietly. Naruto smiled at her and nodded. I am Uzumaki Naruto, he said boisterously, breaking the shock of his manners. Nara Yoshino. Shikamaru's mother said as she smiled. They soon started eating. Naruto enjoyed the food, and Shikamaru was surprised to see him eat as much as Choji. Once Naruto had eaten his fill, he sat back and smiled lazily at his newest friend and whispered to him, "Thank you for inviting me over, Shikamaru." Shikamaru just nodded back at Naruto as he sat in his chair. Shikamaru's eyes darted over to Naruto, and an unusual gleam appeared in his eyes as he spoke. Would you like to play a game, Naruto? He asked. Naruto's intrigued expression was his answer. I enjoy playing shogi. I want you to play a match with me, he said to his friend. The adults and Choji had disbelieving expressions on their faces. The only person to beat Shikamaru was Shikaku. I don't know how to play, Shikamaru. Can you teach me? Naruto asked curiously. Though he had read a little about the game, he didn't know everything. He didn't want to deny playing a game with his friend, especially since he said he wanted to play with him. Practically a first for Naruto. Of course, let's see what you can do, Shikamaru replied and stood up. He walked over to Shikaku-sama. He gave him a board. Shikamaru grabbed it and opened it, and now it was the size of almost a meter length and half-meter width. Shikamaru explained the rules to him and soon started playing. Naruto understood how to play and started playing. It didn't take long to realize that Shikamaru was very good at it. Choji and Ino were looking at them. Well, Choji was. Ino didn't look that much interested. Shikaku-sama looked at them like a hawk, analyzing every move of them. Naruto felt slightly uncomfortable under his gaze, but hid it well. Now there were 3 wins for Shikamaru, and Naruto put the finger on his chin. He looked up at Shikamaru determinedly. Another game, Shikamaru, he said. He nodded gladly. And I win, Naruto said, grinning from ear to ear. Shikamaru looked surprised that he lost, but even more surprised were the others, even Ino. She didn't understand the game, but even she knew that Shikamaru was good at it. Wow, Naruto, you're good at it. Naruto heard Shikaku-sama compliment him, much to his surprise since he expected him to be angry at him for winning. Shikamaru held a finger on his chin and looked at Shoki's board, almost like he was scanning and wanting to know how he lost. I never thought he would lose, said Choji. Yeah, you finally showed his lazy ass, Ino shouted and gave Naruto a warm smile. Naruto smiled back, but then noticed her father glaring down at Ino. You shouldn't be so loud, Ino, her father said with a stern tone. Ino shivered and nodded her head without saying anything. Naruto chuckled under his breath and turned his eyes to Shikamaru, who was still looking at the board, almost expecting to receive an answer. He looked up at Naruto. One more game, he stated, and Naruto grinned and played one more game. They were finally done after 5 more games. It was 4 wins for Naruto and 6 wins for Shikamaru. Very good, Naruto-kun, Shikaku-sama complimented him. Ino and Choji had fallen asleep since it was very late now. Thank you, Shikaku-sama. Naruto thanked him, and looked back at Shikamaru, who looked tired but still was all ears. I can't wait to play another game, Shikamaru said, and they shook their hands. Naruto escaped his thoughts when one of the kunai fell from his finger. The other was still standing, and the leaf was on his forehead. Naruto's hand moved to the leaf on his forehead when he grabbed it. Naruto was surprised to see that it looked slightly more significant, and the petiole was a dark color, almost like it was burned, while the tip and margin were soaking wet, and the middle had started growing small midbrain. Naruto scratched his cheek slightly in confusion, and he didn't understand what was happening, and why the leaf would react like that. I'm sure this has something to do with your affinities, Kurama suddenly talked. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Do I have more than one affinity? Naruto asked him, and he knew what the affinities that a ninja can have. The first Hokage had strong water and earth affinity, and he could use wood style by combining them. Yes. I'm not entirely sure which one you have, but by looking at the leaf, I can safely say you have strong fire affinity and water affinity. As for the leaf growing larger, it might be because of your Senju blood, Kurama explained, and noticing that in the seal, the forest looked greener, he could swear that he was feeling wind caressing his body. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He didn't know why he would have Senju blood. The only Senju left was Tsunade Senju, and as far as anyone knew, she never had children, and no Senju ever went missing. How is that possible, Kurama? Naruto asked, interested and wondering if Gigi or Tojiji had any information about it. I don't know, but the feeling of your chakra is very similar to both Hashirama Senju and Mito Uzumaki, Kurama said. Hashirama with venom. Naruto noticed it and got even more confused. He knew Mito Uzumaki was the wife of the first Hokage, and that was the only connection he could have with Hashirama-sama. Kurama, do you hate the first Hokage? Naruto asked, but already knowing the answer since he could feel the negative emotions coming from Kurama. He growled and fully opened his eyes. Madara Uchiha might have controlled me with his damn Sharingan, but the first Hokage hunted down all my brothers and sisters and gave them to different villages like we are just mindless beast. He might have thought that he was doing good, but the only thing he did was raise the stakes of wars, causing more death, and doom the life of both the Bijou and whoever became a Jinchuriki, Kurama shouted at the end. Mostly that Naruto had a hard life. Naruto was silent during the whole conversation, and he couldn't help but agree with what Kurama said. Sealing the Bijou stopped no wars. There was the first Shinobi War, second and third wars. Naruto wondered if humanity was doomed like this. To always wage more war and more for eternity until there's nothing left. Kurama noticed the feelings of Naruto. Naruto, you don't need to think about that. You're still too young to think about the problems of this world. Perhaps you can start training your chakra control again since you will need it. Kurama spoke, and silently regretting to tell Naruto about such things now. Naruto smiled and decided to do that. Later. It was 1700 hours, and Naruto was eating lunch. He didn't do anything else but stay in the house. There wasn't much point in going outside, only if he wanted hateful glares from the villagers that he was tired of. He decided to sleep early today. Naruto could hardly keep his eyes open. Walking to the bed, he was ready to lay down in the bed when he felt the presence of the emotionless man again. Naruto tried to feel the two ANBUs that usually stayed close to him, but he couldn't feel them anywhere close to him. He was ready to ask Kurama what to do when 5 Chunin-level people landed very close to his apartment. Naruto turned to look at his bedroom window and opened it. After opening it, he turned back and hid under the bed. He heard the door of his apartment burst open. Demon, one of them shouted with venom in his tone. Naruto felt his heart beating so much that would come out of his chest, cold sweat running through his forehead. The cold wind from outside, making his nose and ears feel like they would fall off. He could hear them checking everywhere around his house when the door of the bedroom burst open. Naruto kept quiet and could feel the ki of the man in his room. The air felt cold as ice, and Naruto tried very hard not to let his body shiver and make noises. The windows open, he must have run outside. Naruto heard a shout inside his room. He still kept quiet, and he heard footsteps going away. He could feel they were still very close to his house despite being outside. But the only problem was that the emotionless ANBU was still in the same place and hadn't moved. Before Naruto could think of anything, the 5 men that left suddenly returned inside his house. Naruto's eyes widened, and his little body started shaking like a leaf. Demon, a cry was heard inside his house. Naruto felt cold tears in his eyes, and he didn't know why no ANBU was around. Suddenly he felt someone grabbing his foot and pulling him out from under the bed. Naruto screamed in horror when he felt a punch on his stomach, his whole air left him, and he fell to the floor. Naruto tried to catch his breath. He was putting his hands on his stomach. "There you are, demon child," the man shouted and grabbed him by his hair. Naruto tried to move his hands away, but he was no match to a Chunin. He opened his eyes to see this man in front of him had dark hair. He was smiling viciously to him. Naruto tried to punch and kick him when he threw him outside through the window. Naruto felt pain everywhere. He stood up and tried to run away. He could feel a mob of villagers very close to him. "Catch the demon. You won't run away this time. Kill him." People shouted different things, and he could hear their footsteps running towards him. Despite wearing only a shirt and a pair of pants, and that the ground was covered in snow, and it was snowing, Naruto didn't feel cold. On the opposite, he felt warm, almost like a fire inside him. Suddenly his eyes turned blood red, his nails grew, and his whiskers looked more on his face. "Run, Naruto," Kurama yelled. Naruto felt a surge of power inside him and ran away with all his strength. He ran to his right and then to his right again. He remembered this way was where Shikamaru's house was. He was sure he would be safe if he could get there. But suddenly, the emotionless ANBU moved and landed right in front of him, punching him in the face and throwing him against the wall. Naruto growled at the strange man and tried to run away when he felt a sharp pain in his hand. "Ah!" Naruto screamed. He saw a kunai on his right palm. Blood coming out of the wound. He gritted his teeth almost to the point of breaking. The mob reached him. If that wasn't enough, Naruto could feel 5 shinobi amongst them. The ANBU had immediately left. Naruto could feel the gaze of hatred in both ways. Tears fell freely from his red eyes. "Look at the demon, like a rat in the mousetrap," one of them shouted and walked closer. Kurama inside felt furious at the stupid people. "I'm not a demon," Naruto yelled, his voice sounding demonic. The mob flinched by his tone, but they quickly started walking towards him. One of them reached him. "This will be fun, child," he whispered the last part before he punched him in the gut. Naruto gasped for air, and his right hand wasn't moving. He could hardly feel anything from it. Naruto closed his eyes. "Tojiji, where are you? Tu-chan, please help me. Kaa-chan, please," Naruto begged as he felt punch after punch to his body. Soon he was lying on the cold ground, blood coming out of his nose, ears, and mouth. His right palm had stopped bleeding, and he felt no pain, his whole body felt numb. Kurama was trying to heal him when one of them pulled out a kunai. "This is your end," he shouted and went to stab him in the neck when everything went dark. Naruto couldn't see anything that happened next, but he could have sworn he heard the sound of wood-piercing flesh and the screams of agony.
Alright guys, that's going to be part 11 of What If Naruto Was the Red Flash. I hope you guys enjoyed, and like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed this part. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And yeah, so little bit of a cliffhanger, little bit of a foreshadowing there. So I hope you guys are getting excited for it, you know? And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next part. Bye.